The glutes, my favorite muscle, the powerhouse of them all. Here we are from our lateral aspect of our hip here, and the gluteal muscles here. Alright, so we know we have the glute max, the powerhouse of them all. It comes right behind the hip. It attaches along the ilium, along the sacrum. We don't have the sacrum here. We kind of took that off here a little bit. And down into the coccyx there, that's where it attaches. Comes down, swoops in, attaches right to the femur here, portion of it. The other portion blends into the IT band, which comes down to the lateral aspect of the tibia, and then into the lateral aspect of the patella. And that has it has an influence on some motion down through here. Very important component of the IT band. The big thing with the glutes, obviously sagittal plane, more glute max, decelerates hip flexion, accelerates concentrically the hip extension in the sagittal plane. Transverse plane, it decelerates femoral and tibial internal rotation because of the attachment. Attachment here on the femur decelerates femur internal rotation. Attachment through the IT band decelerates tibial internal rotation. Concentrically, it actually externally rotates the femur, which externally rotates the hip. It is hip external rotation. And it does assist in external rotation of the tibia through the IT band attachment. Frontal plane, AD duct. So if we're here and we go towards midline, it actually has a little component of deceleration, eccentrically loading. And of course, it does have a small component of abduction. Okay, and I say a small component, but it's not primary. The big motions of the glute max is in the sagittal plane, flexion extension, and then internal and external rotation. The ones that have the most influence on the abduction of the frontal plane is the medius, the glute medius, glute minimus. All right, so then that's a very important single leg stance. We need to have stability here out on the lateral aspect of the hip. It comes down, attaches to the femur, the trochanter right here. So as I AD duct, hopefully you're getting this. I'm going to step back. As I AD duct, I eccentrically load the glute medius and the minimus. All right, in the frontal plane. As I abduct, I concentrically contract those muscles. Okay, as we single leg stance, we need those muscles to create stability and stabilize. Okay? Oftentimes, you'll see people single leg stance and they'll AD duct because they can't support. We'll get into that, of course, with our exercises. In the frontal plane, or the sagittal plane, sorry, they do have some components of flexion and extension. Okay, so if I flex, it gets a little bit more of the posterior fibers. If I extend, I get a little bit more of the anterior fibers from an eccentric standpoint. Vice versa, concentrically anterior fiber, this is very slight. And then concentrically posterior fibers in extension. Internal external rotation. Alright, so if I internally rotate here, the hip or the femur, the anterior fibers actually concentrically does that, while eccentrically we get a decelerating component of the posterior fibers. And it's vice versa. If I externally rotate, concentrically work in the posterior medius, and then eccentrically I'll get some lengthening in the anterior component. More of a posterior muscle. Okay, so we want you to think about the glute medius as an abductor, stabilizer, and an external rotator. That's why we do clamshells and things like that. That'll hit that glute medius. The posterior glute medius, as commonly referred to for specific means. So that's a component of the glutes. Actually, I'm going to go on to some hip flexors. I'm not going to do it right now, but there's our glutes. Okay, major stabilizers of the hip, but power stabilizers of hip extension and external rotation, and decelerating flexion and internal rotation. So in plain terms, concentrically three motions: extension, external rotation, and abduction concentrically. Eccentrically decelerates flexion, internal rotation and AD or adduction. That's the glutes.